Old houses have memory. They absorb the lives of everyone who has ever lived within them. The laughter, the arguments, and the fear. The walls don't just hold up the roof, they hold secrets. Most of the time, these secrets stay buried under layers of paint and plaster. But every now and then, a loose brick or a renovation project reveals something that was meant to stay hidden forever. Something that was locked away for a reason. Tonight, we have 4 creepy true stories of what people have found in walls. These accounts come from people who innocently peeled back the layers of their own homes, only to uncover a darkness that was waiting for them. Let's begin. Story 1. The Portrait in the Wall. My wife Clara and I bought our first house about 3 years ago. It was an old Victorian place on the edge of town. The kind of house that needed a lot of love, but had incredible potential. We were young, ambitious, and a little naive. So we decided to do most of the renovations ourselves. We spent our weekends covered in dust, pulling up carpets, and tearing down faded floral wallpaper. The living room was our biggest project. It had a strange flat wall between 2 large windows that just didn't seem right. The blueprints we'd found at the town hall showed a fireplace was supposed to be there. We figured one of the previous owners had just covered it up. So, one Saturday, I took a sledgehammer and knocked a small hole in the center of the wall. It wasn't a fireplace. Behind the drywall and a set of rotting wooden planks was a small, empty space. A void. It was maybe 6 feet tall and about 2 feet deep, like a shallow closet that had been sealed shut. The air that came out of it was stale and smelled like dry rot and something else. Something faintly metallic, like old blood. Clara shone a flashlight inside. It was completely empty, except for one single object leaning against the back wall. It was a framed portrait, about the size of a shoebox lid. It was one of those old sepia-toned photographs from the late 1800s. I reached in and carefully pulled it out. The photo showed a family of 3. A stern-looking man with a thick mustache. A woman with her hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. And a little girl who couldn't have been more than 6, holding a porcelain doll. They were all dressed in dark, formal clothing, and none of them were smiling. It was incredibly creepy, but also a fascinating piece of the house's history. We decided to hang it on the mantelpiece of the actual fireplace in the den. That night, things started to feel off. While we were watching TV, I glanced over at the portrait. "Hey," I said to Clara, "didn't the little girl have a doll?" Clara looked. The girl's hands were now empty, clasped tightly in her lap. We both stared at it, confused. We figured it must have been a trick of the light. Or maybe we just misremembered. We were tired after all. The next morning, I was the first one up. As I walked through the den, I looked at the photo again. My heart stopped. The man in the picture. His head was tilted, ever so slightly, to the left. His eyes, which had been staring straight ahead, now seemed to be looking directly at the chair I always sat in. I felt a cold chill crawl up my spine. I called for Clara, and she saw it too. There was no denying it. Something was wrong with this picture. Against my better judgment, but fueled by a morbid curiosity, we left it on the mantel. We started taking photos of it with our phones every few hours to prove we weren't going crazy. And every time, there was a small, almost imperceptible change. The woman's expression would soften into something that looked like sadness. The man's gaze would follow you around the room. The little girl's hands would be open, then closed. The third night was the worst. We had friends over, and we showed them the picture, explaining the weird things that had been happening. They were skeptical, of course. One of our friends, Mark, laughed and tapped the glass. "You guys are just spooking yourselves out," he said. Later that night, after everyone had left, Claire and I were cleaning up. She suddenly gasped and grabbed my arm. She was pale, pointing at the photograph. I looked, and my blood ran cold. The man, the woman, and the little girl were all there, just as before. But they weren't alone anymore. Standing behind them, in the deep shadows of the portrait, was a fourth figure. It was tall and blurry, with no discernible features. It hadn't been there before. We checked the pictures on our phones. It was new. We'd had enough. I took the portrait off the wall, ready to smash it or burn it. But as I turned it over in my hands, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. There was a small brass plaque on the back of the wooden frame, tarnished with age. I polished it with my sleeve and read the inscription. It was a family name and a single date, 1889. The same year, the house was built, but that wasn't what made me drop the frame. Below the date were 3 names: Isaac, Eleanor, and their daughter, Catherine. My name is Isaac, and my wife's name is Clara Eleanor. We stared at each other in horrified silence. Then, we heard it. A faint, rhythmic scratching sound. It was coming from the living room. It was coming from inside the wall we had just patched up. It sounded like a fingernail, slowly dragging itself across the wood from the inside. We didn't stay to investigate. We grabbed our keys, got in the car, and spent the night at a hotel. We sold the house a month later. We never told the new owners about the portrait or the space in the wall. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about it. I think about that fourth figure in the shadows and the scratching sound. And I wonder if it's still waiting in there for someone else to let it out. Story 2: The Teddy Bear. When we moved into the house on Maple Street, it seemed perfect. It was a new construction in a quiet suburb, the ideal place to raise our 5-year-old daughter, Lily. For the first few weeks, everything was fine. Lily loved her new room, which was painted a bright, cheerful yellow. But then, she started talking about her new friend. She called him Whispers. She said he lived in her wall. At first, we thought it was cute. Kids have imaginary friends. She would sit in the corner of her room, facing the wall, and have long, one-sided conversations. Sometimes she would laugh, and other times she would just listen intently, nodding her head. Whispers is sad today, she'd tell us at dinner. His mom and dad left him in the dark. My wife, Sarah, and I would just smile and play along. "Well, you tell Whispers he's welcome to play with your toys anytime," I'd say. But after a month, it started to get less cute. Lily began having nightmares. She'd wake up screaming, saying Whispers was scared of the tapping man. She claimed a man would tap on the wall from the other side, and it made Whispers cry. Our house was brand new. There were no strange noises. We chalked it up to an overactive imagination, maybe stress from the move. The conversations with the wall became more intense. We'd hear her through the baby monitor, her voice small and scared. "No, I can't," she'd whisper. "Daddy says I'm not allowed." One time, Sarah went in to check on her and found her with her ear pressed against the drywall, her face pale. "He wants to show me his favorite toy," Lily said, her eyes wide. But he said it stuck. That was the point when we started to get genuinely concerned. We tried talking to Lily about it, telling her, that whispers wasn't real. This just made her angry. "He is real," she'd shout, tears in her eyes. "You just can't hear him." The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the garage trying to fix a loose shelf. I needed to run a new electrical cable up to the attic, and the easiest path was through the wall in Lily's bedroom. I told her I needed to make a small hole in her wall and that I would patch it up perfectly. She started crying hysterically. "You can't," she shrieked. "You'll hurt him. You'll break his house." It took Sarah half an hour to calm her down. By then, I was determined to get this over with. I was starting to think maybe there was a pest problem, mice or something, and the sounds were what Lily was personifying. I went into her room with my drywall saw. I measured the spot, right in the corner, where she always talked to the wall, and made a small, square cut. As I pulled the piece of drywall away, a puff of insulation dust came out. And tucked deep inside the insulation, there was something else. It was a teddy bear. It was old and filthy, with one button eye missing and its stuffing poking out of a tear in its stomach. It looked like it had been there for a very, very long time. But that was impossible. The house was less than a year old. The walls had only been sealed a few months ago. I reached in and pulled it out. It felt damp and heavy. Lily, who had been watching from the doorway with tear-filled eyes, gasped. "You found it," she whispered. "That's his bear." I stood up confused, holding the disgusting toy. How in the world did this get here? Did one of the construction workers leave it as a prank? Suddenly, Lily let out a blood-curdling scream. It wasn't a normal kid's scream. It was pure, absolute terror. I dropped the bear and spun around. She was pointing at the corner of the room, her face white as a sheet. "He's not in the wall anymore," she sobbed, backing away until she hit the opposite wall and slid to the floor. "You let him out. He's angry. He's right there." I looked at the corner she was pointing at. There was nothing there, just an empty corner, painted a cheerful yellow. But the air in the room had turned ice cold. And for a split second, I saw it. A flicker in the air. A tall, thin shadow that seemed to stretch from the floor to the ceiling before vanishing. Lily wouldn't sleep in her room after that. She wouldn't even go in there. We ended up patching the wall and turning it into a guest room. We threw the bear in the trash, and it was hauled away the next morning. But it didn't solve anything. Now, Lily sleeps in our room. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, I wake up to the sound of her whispering. She isn't talking to the wall anymore. She's talking to the dark corner of our bedroom, right next to my side of the bed. And I can't shake the feeling that whatever was in that wall is now in the room with us, just listening. Story 3, the cassette tape. Image 1, discovering the loose brick. Being a student means you're always broke. So when I found a tiny studio apartment for dirt cheap, I jumped on it. The building was old and grimy, and my landlord was a chain smoker who clearly didn't care about maintenance. But it was a roof over my head. The first thing I noticed was the sound. At night, when the city outside was quiet, I would hear things. A faint, muffled murmuring. It sounded like a television was on in the next apartment, just too low to make out the words. I'd bang on the wall, but it never stopped. It was annoying, but I learned to live with it. I just figured I had a neighbor who fell asleep with the TV on every night. A few months into my lease, I was rearranging my furniture, trying to make the small space feel bigger. I pushed my heavy bookshelf away from the wall and noticed something odd. One of the bricks, the wall was exposed brick, was loose. It was darker than the others. Curiosity got the better of me. Back a tiny bit. I wiggled it, and it came right out. Behind it was a dark, hollow space, just big enough to fit your arm into. I used my phone's flashlight to look inside. My heart skipped a beat when I saw it. It wasn't plumbing or wiring. It was an old portable cassette player and a single cassette tape. I pulled them out. They were covered in a thick layer of dust. The tape had a yellowed label on it, with 2 words handwritten in shaky ink. My confession. My mind raced. This was probably some stupid prank left by a former tenant. But the murmuring I'd been hearing every night. Could it have been this? No, that was impossible. The player's batteries were sure to be dead. Still, I had to know. I went to the corner store, bought a new set of batteries, and popped them in. I put on my headphones, took a deep breath, and pressed play. An old man's voice crackled to life in my ears. It was weak, raspy, and filled with a kind of despair that made my skin crawl. I don't know who will find this, the voice began, or when, but I can't. I can't carry it anymore. What I did in this room, what he made me do. The man took a shaky breath. Her name was Eleanor. She lived across the hall. Such a sweet girl, always smiling. I wanted to talk to her, but I was always too shy, too afraid. The man's voice grew colder, but he wasn't shy. He whispered to me, from the corner, from the walls. He told me she wanted me to come over. He told me to be brave. He told me what to do. The narrator started to sob, a dry, rattling sound. I knocked on her door. She was so surprised to see me. She invited me in for tea. We talked for an hour. It was nice. But he was there, in the corner of her apartment too, whispering, telling me the tea wasn't enough, that she needed to be quiet, forever. My blood ran cold. I wanted to stop the tape, but I couldn't. I don't even remember doing it, the old man cried. It was like watching someone else use my hands. He made me bring her back here, to this room. He made me put her where no one would ever find her, where she would always be close. The man paused, and I could hear him breathing heavily, the sound wet and ragged. I'm so sorry, Eleanor, I'm so sorry. The tape went silent for a few seconds. I was about to take my headphones off when the man's voice came back, but this time it was a frantic, terrified whisper. Oh God, he's here. He's in the room with me now. He knows I'm telling. He doesn't like it. He's standing right behind me. He's reaching for me. The tape ended with a sudden loud click, followed by the soft, empty hiss of a blank recording. I ripped the headphones off, my heart hammering against my ribs. I was shaking. I stared at the wall where I'd found the tape, my mind reeling, where she would always be close. Did he meet in the wall? Was that the murmuring I had been hearing? As if on cue, a floorboard creaked in the hallway, right outside my apartment door. I froze, listening. My apartment was at the end of the hall. No one ever had a reason to be right outside my door, unless they were visiting me. Another creak, closer this time. It was followed by a slow, deliberate knock on my door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just sat there, in the dark, listening to the silence that followed. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to my very soul, that it wasn't my landlord, and it wasn't a neighbor. And I knew that whatever had whispered to that old man all those years ago was now standing on the other side of my door, waiting for me to let it in. Story 4. The Organic Mass. I work as a botanist, and my passion has always been studying strange fungi and biological anomalies. So when I managed to buy a small, run-down cabin deep in the woods of the Pacific Northwest, I was ecstatic. It was the perfect, isolated place to conduct my research and get away from the world. The cabin needed a lot of work, but I was up for the challenge. The basement was the worst part. It was damp, smelled of earth and mold, and had crumbling stone walls. While I was cleaning it out, I noticed a large, ugly patch on one of the walls. It was a bulging section of plaster, about 3 feet in diameter, discolored with a strange pinkish-gray hue. I assumed it was water damage, causing some kind of aggressive mold. I put on a respirator and gloves and took a scraper to it. The moment the metal touched the plaster, I felt a weird vibration, like a low hum, travel up the handle and into my arm. I ignored it, thinking it was just the old house settling. I chipped away a piece of the plaster. What was underneath wasn't mold. It wasn't wood or stone either. It was a dense, fibrous mass of something. Organic. It was a pale, fleshy pink, and it was covered in a network of dark purple, vein-like tendrils that pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm, like a sleeping heart. The surface was warm and slightly soft to the touch. It looked biological, alive, but unlike any plant or fungus I had ever seen. It seemed to be woven directly into the wooden beams of the cabin's foundation, as if it had grown there. As a biologist, my fear was quickly replaced by an intense, scientific curiosity. What was this thing? A new species of slime mold? A symbiotic colony of unknown organisms? I had to get a sample. I went upstairs and grabbed my field kit, which contained scalpels, forceps, and sample jars. I returned to the basement, my mind racing with possibilities. I carefully leaned in and used the scalpel to try and cut a small piece from the edge of the mass. The instant the blade touched it, 2 things happened at once. First, the entire mass recoiled violently, pulling away from the scalpel and deeper into the wall with a wet, tearing sound. Second, a silent scream exploded in my head. It wasn't a sound I heard with my ears. It was a feeling, a wave of pure agony and rage that was somehow broadcast directly into my consciousness. It was so intense, it made me stagger backward, dropping the scalpel and clutching my head. My ears were ringing. My vision swam. I felt a primal, instinctual terror that I had never experienced before. This thing wasn't just alive, it was aware, and I had just hurt it. I stumbled out of the basement, slammed the door shut, and locked it. I sat on the kitchen floor for an hour, my heart pounding, trying to understand what had just happened. My scientific mind was at war with the terrified animal part of my brain. The next morning, I convinced myself I had imagined the worst of it. Maybe some weird static discharge or a low-frequency sound had caused my reaction. I had to know for sure. I needed to document it. With trembling hands, I opened the basement door and went back down. I looked at the wall where I had chipped away the plaster. The plaster was back. It was a fresh, smooth patch, completely covering the hole I had made. But it was different now. The patch was much larger, covering nearly half the wall. The pinkish-gray color was darker, and the bulge was more pronounced. And as I stared at it, I saw it. The surface of the plaster was slowly, almost imperceptibly, shifting. And pressing out from behind it, I could just make out the faint, distorted outline of a human face. Its eyes were closed, and its mouth was open in a silent, eternal scream. It looked like it was trapped inside, struggling to push its way through the wall and into the room. I've been living here for a week since then. I haven't been back in the basement, but I don't need to. The patch is growing. I can see it spreading from the basement door. Thin, vein-like cracks creeping up the wall and along the floorboards of the kitchen. And at night, I don't hear a scream anymore. I hear a whisper. It comes from all around me, from the very walls of the cabin itself. And it's calling my name. The walls of our homes are supposed to keep us safe from the outside world. But what happens when the real danger is already inside, just waiting to be found? Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.